Professor Syed's scholarship focused on legal theory, political economy, and political philosophy. He has special reference to intellectual property, theories of distributive justice, and innovation law and policy. Let us go forward with Professor Syed's remarks, having been chosen by the students for this honor. Professor Syed is a distinguished scholar. His work has been published in the Yale Law Journal, the Texas Law Review, the Journal of Law and Political Economy, and the Berkeley Technology Law Journal, among other leading journals, as well as Cambridge University Press. Prior to arriving at Berkeley, Professor Syed received his bachelor's degree in political theory from the University of Western Ontario and his JD from the University of Victoria, where he received the gold medal as the top graduating student. He completed his graduate studies at Harvard University, obtaining his LLM with a straight A average and receiving distinction for his JSD oral examination. He is currently completing 2 book projects, one on pharmaceutical innovation policy and the other on law and the critique of political economy. Please join me in welcoming and listening to Professor Syed.
Thanks very much, Dean Chemerinsky. And thank you even more to the graduating class of 2024 for the incredible honor of selecting me as your faculty speaker. I'm really deeply moved by this gesture of recognition and appreciation, and it's one that I hope to live up to in the next 10 minutes and to reciprocate going forward as our professional paths hopefully continue to intertwine well into the future. But I should say at the outset, I was a little perplexed when I first heard that you had selected me as a speaker. Yeah, not gonna lie. Surely, I thought to myself, they've made a mistake and forgotten what I might say in front of their friends and family. I mean, my brand of honesty isn't really cut out for an occasion like commencement. Then it slowly dawned on me, oh my God, they want my brand of honesty for an occasion like commencement. All right, so you know, there will be no wild exhortations here to make mental contact or any irreverent remarks about our judicial icons. In fact, let me begin by citing one such icon, Justice Scalia. On his, I don't know why that even gets, okay. On his, and I quote, philosophy of commencements. Commencements, the Justice observed, are less for the graduates themselves than an occasion of pleasure and pride for their families and friends. As for the primary participants, said Justice Scalia, they themselves might rather be elsewhere, much like in the case of a wedding or a circumcision. Oh, sorry. The Justice said baptism. I have no idea how circumcision got in there. Okay, so in the spirit of celebration, first things first. Dear family and friends, faculty, Dean Chemerinsky, honored guest Solicitor General Prologar, please join me in congratulating the JDs, LLMs, JSTs, and JSBs of 2024 for the incredible, wonderful achievement of graduating from one of the finest law schools in the world. So, with apologies to Pim and Devanshi, because what I'm going to say is going to sound like notes on variations on a theme, I've chosen for my brief remarks today the theme of law and life when living in interesting times. The historian of classical antiquity, Pier Vesperini, remarks that as in the life of a person, so in history, nothing happens without leaving a trace. And so what I'd like to do is offer some thoughts on law as a bridge between the history of one society and the trajectory of one's own life. By living in interesting times, I mean, of course, to invoke the famous Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times, where interesting is meant ironically, not so much as stimulating or engaging, but rather as turbulent or even times of deep turmoil. I should note it's unclear whether the original source of the aphorism is Chinese or whether this is all apocryphal, but let me put that aside. That we live in a time of turbulence and deep turmoil is, of course, plain to all of us. The evidence is strewn about our crisis-ridden world, from deep domestic political and cultural divides and dire economic inequality to increasing global geopolitical instability and looming ecological catastrophe. And I know this is all especially clear for those who are graduating today. My interactions with you over the past 3 years have driven home just how intellectually curious, critically sophisticated, and socially passionate you are as a group, more than any other cohort in my recent memory. Yet, I do think it's worth emphasizing, nevertheless, just how exceptional our time is by putting it in some brief historical perspective. As someone like me who grew up under the glacier of neoliberalism, that wasn't even a joke. My generation, the reigning slogan was, "There is no alternative." For yours, a more apt one seems to be, "The world is broken and we need another." So put simply, I believe ours is a time of potentially fundamental realignment in the deep tectonic plates of our political economic system. A time when the deepest institutional and ideological premises of our existing social arrangements are being revisited after many decades and up for grabs. We've had 3 similar such periods in the past 150 or so years. The period after the Civil War, which ushered in an era of what we could call classical liberal political economy from roughly 1870 to 1936. The New Deal era from roughly 1936 to 1980. And the neoliberal era from roughly 1980 to yesterday. Each of these periods was marked by a decade-plus long ideological and political struggle over what the intellectual and institutional contours should be of a new social settlement to take the place of the old. And where is the law in this ferment? In a country where, as de Tocqueville remarked, scarcely any political question that arises is not sooner or later resolved into a judicial one, law is, of course, absolutely front and center. Law is that part of the social iceberg that comes to surface for view. Law is where, often for the first time, a part of society's otherwise invisible architecture becomes available for explicit assessment and possible revision. And so it falls upon lawyers, especially those living in interesting times, to help identify areas in possible need of reassessment and offer suggestions for their possible revision. How? With what tools of the trade should lawyers take up this task of participating in the reconstruction of society? Here, a useful starting point may be to reverse de Tocqueville's dictum. Scarcely any legal question that arises does not sooner or later resolve into a political one. No matter how seemingly technical the issue as initially posed, rare is the legal question that does not ultimately back into larger questions of social value, concerning what our aims are in a fair and decent society, what means for their realization are workable and effective, and how we can pursue these aims fairly as a matter of due process. To seek to cabin law off from such questions of social value is to risk turning it into a lifeless form, a fetish. To turn the letter of the law into a series of empty shibboleths rather than the spirit made flesh. Of course, there's an understandable fear that lies behind our desire to fetishize form, and that is the terror of turning to substance. If law is nothing but values, whose values are to prevail? Aren't values purely subjective? Perhaps some are, but not those of law. Are they then objective? Not if we mean by that true from the point of view of nature or God or eternity. No, the values of law are neither subjective nor objective. They are social. They are the values that we publicly declaim and commit ourselves accountable to. They are the values that constitute who we are. But doesn't that just reduce law to politics? I don't believe so. While law is not severable from politics, that does not mean it is collapsible to politics. Law is a form of politics, using particular means. All the interest lies in specifying that form and analyzing the means. The form our law takes is of deciding which human interests are to be protected as rights, by weighing the claims of some against the competing ones of others. The means by which we engage in such weighing is the giving and taking of reasons. Not rules, not words, reasons. Law is where we subject our politics to an explicit, deliberate, and iterative process of reason-giving, holding each other and ourselves accountable, not only to our past decisions, but those articulate justifications of those decisions that, upon reflection, we believe best hold up. Your legal education at Berkeley Law has been one intense immersion into the process of identifying different areas of the architecture of society and articulating various reasons that we may have for how to shape it going forward. How you choose to use those tools is, of course, up to you. But know that whatever choice you make today will leave an indelible trace upon you tomorrow. How you author your role in law will surely play a large role in shaping your own life. And know also that I, and I believe all the other faculty at Berkeley Law, have an immense pride in what you've already accomplished and immense confidence in what will you do going forward. Congratulations.